Hello, Rick.
Good afternoon. We made it.
Yes, finally.
Oh, sorry for
How's
all
your
that confusion.
Yes. No, that's okay.
Whoops. You're breaking up. Your voice was breaking up.
Oh, maybe the internet connections.
That's better.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because are you at the office or in a hotel?
Yeah, I'm at the office. Yeah.
Okay. I'm in a
So
hotel,
I
so
had a,
we're gonna hope my internet at the hotel's good.
Oh, okay. Where are
So
you in, Rick?
I am in Omaha.
Oh.
So unless you start doing railroad work, you probably won't be here very often.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a big railroad town, but not terribly into air. Well, they have an airport, but pretty small and pretty localized. So, well, I like your homework.
Oh, thank you. I'm a good student, right, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to come back to your homework in a minute, but
Yeah.
I want to just kind of set our stage for today, and and that really is going to just start with some of the things exactly like you sent me. Start over some of this conversation, and then eventually we'll talk about what we'll do Saturday, and that'll just be a wrap up and focus on the mastery elements just to help you carry this all forward. So that'll be our mission for the next two calls.
Okay.
That work?
Yeah, that works for me. Yeah, absolutely.
The first one I have to know is, did you get to practice at the conference?
Yes. Yes. Well, that went well, Rick, to be honest with you. And I've talked with two different people. So one guy is from Southwest Airlines. He works as flight operations. So
Wow.
and yeah, and I talked to him like we are aviation consultant. We solve this problem, and his eyes like open like, oh wow. And his reaction is very interesting. And he said me that, well, that's so these problems that you just said to me are common problem for aviation industry. Like it's like for especially like starting companies, especially the old like companies, they haven't have any turnover. They still have like the average working age is like 50s, 60s. They need the younger like experts, right? So he said me that that's really interesting. Like I've seen like he has been working with this company since 2008. So he knows all of the evolution of his company, what was their company's the company problem. So he was really interested that. Yeah.
Isn't it wonderful how you can start a conversation and learn about each other that way?
Yeah. So that was a big experience for me, Rick. Yeah. So I should keep doing that in the future. So my so I should show to my clients like how we solve our clients' problem. why we are here, why I'm working for aviation consultant company, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It was
Yes.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So thank you, Rick, for your
well,
recommendation.
it was wonderful that you were there so that you could, practice it in a, where there were no expectations. You just get to go in and start the conversation and see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you say you talked to another person as well?
Yes, the lady from it was the chemical company. I think they produce the de-icing fluids, and they provide the de-icing companies the yeah. So this lady like wasn't interested too much, but she was a really good listener.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, good. Excellent. And, the global, we know the chemical company was a bit of a long shot, but on the other hand, she may run into somebody and she goes, "Oh my gosh, you got to talk to Belorma."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that's why it's important to have that conversation with
Mhm.
lots of different people, because it allows them to, one of the ways we become valuable to our customers is when we can introduce our customers to people who can solve their problems.
Mhm.
If we
Yeah.
can't, but we can introduce them to someone who can, that makes our customers eager to talk to us all the time.
Yes. Yeah. That's our oh, that's our like we it reflects to our companies. We should say no, or we
Yes,
can recommend someone else
exactly.
who can solve their problem.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and
Mhm.
it also lets them know that we're really focused on the customer, not just can they buy something from us.
Yes, yeah, that's the value. Yeah,
Yep. So excellent.
yeah.
Excellent. Were there other learnings from the show that didn't have anything to do with our talk?
Well, the I had just the morning session since our last season, so I've just talked to people, but the rest of them I have already met before that date, so we haven't talked too much about our products and services. So it was good.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Um, so now let's, between now and our call on Saturday, I want to start. My goal is for you to um, build ways, build habits, build processes that help you remember to apply the things we're learning.
Mm-hmm.
And just like while you were at that conference last week, you had the chance right then to apply it. So we want to make sure we help you build repeatable process to apply it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we think about some of these things, whether it's the buyer seller gap, the 3 rules, the true north, those kinds of things, the goal is to make those second nature for you so that they're automatic. So, have you thought more about? We can start at the top of the page. Have you started any more thinking about your why and how to engage people with that, or the cost of chaos and how to remove that? Help me understand what you're thinking about that you can see, wow, I can use this.
Mm-hmm. So after I read the buyer seller gap article, so I try to apply it to our company. So the most interesting point was from the article was buyers' behavior and expectations are changing much faster than the sellers. So we should be really like sensitive on our sellers' expectations. So, for example, the article says that the buyers were twice as likely to say that salespeople meet their expectations, like 61.8% of them. For example, for our company, our website, I think our website plays principal sales roles, which the main tool of engage us in buyers buying decisions. So before our clients to contact us, they already went through our websites and everything, like our credentials, who are they, what they do. So I thought our website could be a main impact to our clients, their buying decisions. So that's the first step, their buying decisions, right?
Yes.
And also the article says like less than a quarter of the buyers selected vendor salespeople as a top 3 source to solve the business problem. So I saw the graph. So that graph says 43% of the people think the subject matter experts from industry or third parties really affect their buying decisions, like solve the business problems. So I think we should clearly show our credentials, like who we are, like what's our past experience, what's our previous clients. So that's what I thought. Yeah.
You have some wonderful observations there. Your website, your LinkedIn profiles, any articles you've written, if you or Wayne are speaking someplace and you can get videos that show up on your website, those make huge differences in 3 different places in the revenue roadmap. One is, as you said, exactly right. They will investigate you before they call you. You know, they won't just call. They'll go look you up and make sure that what you have done in the past and your skill sets and your direction all are complementary to what they're looking for. The second thing is, if, for example, the gentleman from Southwest Airlines, he may go back after meeting you and then look up your website and say, oh, okay, they have done this kind of stuff. Oh, I see their background. I see what they're doing. If he refers you to somebody in Southwest, whoever he refers you to, the first thing they're going to do is go look up your website, your LinkedIn profiles. And so in the beginning of the process, whether the beginning is them finding you, you meeting them and networking, a referral, the very first thing that's going to happen if they're remotely interested is they're going to go look you up.
Yeah.
And so when you when they look you up, they're really looking for 2 things. One is, do I believe and your conversation with the gentleman from Southwest Airline, he immediately recognized and appreciated the problems you want to solve for your clients. Is that true?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And so that's the same thing they're looking for on the website. When people come in, first they want to know, do I believe you can help me, or do I believe I care about what you do? And so you have to somehow connect with them so they see, oh my gosh, they can help me, or maybe they can help me. After they see that, then they go look at your credentials to say, not only did you say the problem and indicate you might be able to solve it, but you have experience and credentials and resume that says you probably can help me solve it. So they will do that very early. The second time that this comes up, and it's very similar, but it's different place in the process, is if you were to proceed and have a couple of meetings with somebody from Southwest, and you're starting to have traction with them, and they refer you to other people on their team, it'll happen all over again. That they'll be back in your website, back in your LinkedIn profiles, and it just helps them get up to speed and decide it's a good investment of their time to have a conversation with you. So you're exactly right. And one of the things that in that book summary it talks about is the salespeople were like 9th out of 10 things that buyers use to make decisions, and that typically they don't want to talk to the salespeople until they've already made a decision. And what they really are saying, we want to negotiate price, then we have to talk to the salespeople. But there was another part of the study that said, while today, right this minute, the salespeople haven't been very helpful, they said 90% of them wished the salespeople were helpful early in the process. But so for you, what that says is, when you identify the problem you solve and you demonstrate that you have the skill and the talent, that's when the buyer says, well, I'd love to have your input. I'd love to know what you know about solving this problem that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So the buyer is open to having conversations with you early, but almost like you have to earn it.
Yeah.
And
I agree with the early engagement in buying process is very important. So yeah, we should we are buyers, Afghan is buyer, no seller. So we should tell to our sellers, buyers, sorry, we are sellers, we should tell our buyers, we should engage in the early process. Yeah. So.
And part of that, and I think you should be proud of the fact you can say this, is things that the buyer should know early so they can make better decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's totally appropriate to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they make decisions early and then they have to change, that typically means they have to spend more money than they originally thought they would.
Yeah.
And most of the time, they don't want to go back and tell their boss, well, I told you it was 50,000. I really now know it's 75. That's not, you'd be better off to say it's 75 in the beginning and do it well, rather than be wrong and have to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. the article says there's a range of decisions that they make along the path to a decision. So first one is like identifying and clarifying needs, and what exactly are we trying to solve for? And the second one is identifying possible solutions to meet the need that our clients have. And the next one is like evaluating solutions for relevance. And the next one is like resolving outstanding questions and concerns. And like, will this solution work in our clients' specific needs, or yeah, like, and the last one is like implementing the solution. So
Yep.
we really need to follow those steps with our clients.
Well, and I would add another step in the very beginning.
Okay.
One of the things that you bring to your clients is when you deal with a client, they typically know what happens inside their business. They don't necessarily know what's happening inside other people's businesses. So other people may have ideas or approaches or processes that, let's just pretend it's Southwest or Air Canada or whoever it is, they typically don't know what other carriers are doing. They know a little bit, but they don't know a lot. Part of what you bring is you deal with clients all over the place, literally all over the world. You guys have dealt with clients. So when in that process you just described, those 10 steps, it really starts with, I think it was the problem definition or whatever that very first step was.
Yeah.
You may know that the problem they're defining, there's actually 2 or 3 things before that that can be fixed they don't even think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they're bought into what they do at Air Canada or what they do at Southwest. You know that that problem is linked to 2 other things that if they only focus on this problem, they'll still have to fix the 2 other things. And so you help them have a more complete vision of what they should go do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you have a bigger vision, you have a wider experience. You're not bought into their politics. You don't start out with their internal cultural beliefs. You bring a wider view to the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and part of the reason many of your clients should want to use you is because you aren't internal, because you do bring learnings from other places to them that without you, they don't have access to.
Yeah. Like we can bring a point from outside of the box.
Yes.
Because, yeah.
And so when somebody says, you know, we have this process, whatever language you're comfortable with, but to me it's challenge them and say, you know, we would really approach this in a more complete or a broader or a out of the box kind of way, because we've seen other places and how other places do it, and we also see what you have to connect to. Because sometimes if you're dealing with, let's just say, the baggage handling part of the business, and the human you're talking to is in baggage handling, they may not be totally up to speed on freight, or they may not be up to speed on some of the security issues or some others that you may bring to that conversation that help the airline make a better decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So talk about the value you bring in a very proud way, a very, you know, service-oriented, help the client kind of way, because you do know things they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other
Yeah.
things in that that article, it talked about you know, the 4 or 5 expectations they have for you, and that really starts out with you knowing their business very well, and that's part of this whole piece. That if you do know things they don't know, and they want you to know things they don't know, that's why they need you. And then the other part of there were those 4 at the bottom of that one page, and the last 2 of those items also really related to, yes, we can help you with this project. Yes, we understand, but we're also going to help you take the benefits of this project into the future, into additional places that this project will lead you. So when people try to ask you to focus on a specific, you know, fairly limited project, in today's world, don't hesitate to point out there may be other benefits in the very early stages, and there's a long-term ramification to this. And part of the thinking you're going to do is bring that to them.
Yeah.
So as you think about the buyer-seller gap, how do you think about applying that in the day-to-day, week-to-week kind of world you guys have?
Like everyday daily work.
Well, as you plan to engage with your clients, your customers,
Right.
how do you want to use the learnings from that to engage with your customers?
Like for AFCON, we could like, how to explain that?
Well, let me give you a scenario, and let's just kind of talk about it.
Okay.
One of the things the article points out is a lot of buyers are really going to try and push the salesperson away until they've made a lot of decisions. And a lot of buyers will push salespeople away just because they don't want to deal with them, or, you know, they're afraid you're going to ask them questions they don't know the answers to, or that stuff's going to happen. How do you overcome it? As you think about this, how will you overcome somebody's resistance to talking with you based on what you learned from that article?
Well, like in a real business market, like if I really need to deal with like the customers that you just said, like resist our conversation. So I would try to show what value I can bring for you. So I would more talk about how you value from our service. So what's outcome? So I would point out these things. So I'm here, I would express myself, I'm here for you. Like, and I know I have to engage in early decision of my clients, of buying decisions. So before my clients make a decision, I should show my value. I'm here for you. That's the outcome. That's the difference from other like consulting companies. So yeah.
And little coaching on that's excellent. That is
Mhm.
exactly what you want to do. The coaching I would have for you is, instead of making it about the value of your product or service, focus on the value of solving the problem the way you would solve it for them. So don't say, you know, we would do this for you, but talk about what would it be like if this were your outcome. So they go, oh man, that would be really, really cool, but I don't know how to get that outcome. Oh, that's what I can help you with. So try
Yeah.
and get them to first recognize the wonderful opportunity, the value of that outcome. And then in a minute, they're going to recognize that's what you do. So instead of you saying, as soon as you talk about your product, your service, your value, their body will recoil. You know, it might not recoil a lot, but they're starting to get defensive because what they think you're going to do is immediately ask them for a contract. And they're still processing. So when you say, you know, what would it be like if this were the outcome? If you didn't have to do this and you got this 95 to 100% of the time, what would that be like? Oh man, that would be very cool. And do you have a way to get there now? No, I don't have a way to get there now. Are you interested in a way to get there? Oh yeah, I'd love a way to get there. So you're making it easier for them to be relaxed and confident. So the less you're, say, pitching or pushing your product, the easier it is for them to say yes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You're doing the same thing, but you're doing it as their partner as opposed to the sales vendor person. So, you know, figure out how to get them to see what it would be like to have this outcome. And, you know, then they're going to realize in a second that the way they get that is to work with you.
Yeah.
Anything else from the buyer-seller gap?
Yeah, when I read the article, it says about contracting exact terms and conditions, and I was thinking about a joint of statement. So in that process, we should bring joint of statement, so then we can go through the process. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And one of the places that gets both buyers and sellers in trouble is when they go into the specifications before they've gone into the solution for the problem. So when you talk about the specifications without knowing the whole solution to the problem, sometimes people get very confused. So understand the problem and how you're going to approach it first, and then the specifications afterwards. And this is a place where you can be quite prescriptive. You can be quite challenging at times, where somebody says, well, I just want to know the specifications. And your feedback to them can be, well, of course, we all want to know that, but until we fully understand what problem the specifications are going to solve, I would be doing less than my job to throw those out on the table knowing they're not going to be complete.
Yeah.
Because it's always about giving them the best outcome. And until you fully understand the issue, you can't specify the outcome.
Yeah.
So yes, and that joint statement of work process it is a wonderful way to create a partner with that buyer, because just the way you presented the problem you solved to the Southwest Airlines gentleman, when you're doing that joint statement of work, it's a continual clarifying and solidifying the details of that problem. So when you finally come to give them the specifications and the scope of work and writing and the details and process, it's really based on what's going to delight the buyer, and that ends up with a much better outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So other things in that article, because that's a really powerful way to help keep you focused, is rereading that from time to time and not falling into the trap that once they've decided, then they call you, because that has probably taken a lot of your value out, because they've made decisions that you would have suggested they not make, because you know that the decisions they made limit what they're going to get. And your job is to expand what they get.
Like, I think like consulting is like our way to communicate with clients is not like face-to-face conversation the first time. So like we cannot engage. Like what I'm saying is, like there is no customer that just talk with us like face to face. There's no way the first time. So they should they should hear about our products and services from others. There are tons of sources. There's a zero chance we can talk with face to face, because it's not the common business. Like it's not the food market. Yeah. So we can't distribute our advertisement like on TV. It's zero efficient, right? So I was thinking like, well, how we engage in our buyer's decision. So there's like few resources for us, like website, trade show and meetings. Like from our previous customers, they can talk about us to other companies. So it's really like limited market. We can distribute, we can publish our advertisement and everything.
That's a very important piece. And what I heard you describing is a way that when you engage with the customer over a period of time, they will learn what they need to know in order to decide about how to or if to communicate with you. And when they get to the communication, they already know something about, they already knew part of their problem. Hopefully you've educated them a little more. And now it's time to talk about joint statement of work and moving into a real deployable solution, as opposed to just kind of light conversation or relationship building. So everything you're saying is exactly right. You need to help, and when you do talk to somebody, when you tell them this is the problem we solve and we have a process that we make sure you get those outcomes. And that process is some education. We need to learn about you. You need to learn about us. Some definition, some time frames, some, what are your investment criteria? What are the outcomes you need? And we're going to help walk you through all that, so that if you really want this problem solved, when we're done, that's what you're going to get, and you're going to know you're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you were talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's exactly right. That's exactly how you're going to win, and your customers are going to love it, because you'll be the one place where there's control over their ability to get the solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay, excellent, excellent. So let's kind of jump for a second, and let's talk about the 3 rules. And we talked a little bit about principles the last time.
Yeah.
Did that come together for you? Did you, take a look at those 2 things and start to make some sense out of that?
Yes. Yes. I read all of the pages of the 3 rules summary. So yeah. So I understand that the best before cheaper does not mean price competitions in irrelevant. So it means that when you have a choice to make and when the data are unclear, so we should go with better. So next one is revenue before cost does not mean like keeping cost under the control. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So it means increasing revenue is more important. So I understand that. So the 3rd rule is there are no other rules. Does not mean like you can like blindly follow the rules. Yeah. So I really like that. Yeah.
And so and we're going to look at your true north in a minute, but those examples of the 3 rules are the same kinds of examples, and you've really got them a little bit in there already for the 3 rules, that you're only going to do projects where you can actually help your client get better, and you're not going to do projects where the only thing they want from you is a lower price than somebody else. And when they say the only thing I want is a lower price, the other thing that is implicit in that is, I don't care about getting better. I just care about getting cheaper. And for you and Wayne, that's not a good client. You want a client that when you help them get better, they want you to help them get better this week and next week and the week after and the week after and the week after. And so you don't want single transactions. Your whole business is built upon, we can help you be safer. We can help you with revenue science. We can help you tie together your organization with the community. You're all about how to improve their world. And so it's that consistency, that clarity, that's going to pay you big dividends over the long period of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And did you get a chance to think about the revenue principles that you might use inside the company?
No, I haven't gotten to that.
Okay. And you have a good start on it, okay?
Okay.
And I say that because when we look at your true north,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about one of your principles could have to do with something like you're helping your clients become more efficient, or I love this, unlimited passion and extraordinary teaching. I mean, to me, that is so powerful, that what you're going to do is going to bring this unlimited passion and extraordinary teaching to your clients. Because anybody who's ever been in a training program the last thing they want is a boring, passionless, average kind of teacher. I got to be here 2 days, or I got to be here a week. Oh my gosh, get me out of here. So when you say that, that's highly differentiating. That's extremely, and of course you have to be able to do it, but I believe you can do it. And so then from your customer standpoint, they're going to say, I'm hiring them because I'm not going to get complaints about it being boring, or on that there's no application to it, or there's, nothing they see they're getting out of it. You're not going to let that happen. Mm-hmm. Do I read it right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then, that's a big deal. The other one that's a big deal to me is, if I read this one correctly, the integration of the safety management into corporate and departmental culture, that's the promise on your part that we're not just going to help you, understand what you could do and should do through safety and corporate planning, but we're going to help you actually make it cultural. Because if I do training and all I have done is satisfy the FAA that we trained our people, I guess that's kind of okay. But if I make that cultural, so my people now not only satisfy they've been trained, but they go on and actually do it, and they actually keep each other accountable for doing it, and if they're proud of doing it, now I've got something. Now I'm changing my organization. I'm changing the way I engage with clients. I'm changing my perception in the market. So you're making some very powerful principle statements in these three things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rick, like it's easy to change policy and procedure on the paper, but it's hard to change organization's culture. It's hard. It takes time, but yeah, it's really if an aviation, like for example, like ground handling company has a negative safety culture, but for example, they don't report their incident, they don't report their error, so it's a negative culture. So we are here to change that culture, from bottom to top, but everything starts from top. So we need to change the management, and then we go through the policy and the standard operating procedure, and then the employees should realize, the management know if we report our error by ourselves, we're not gonna be punished. We're not gonna get punishment, right? So that's the real positive culture we wanted to show. We wanted to change the organization.
That is wonderful. And that is such a good example of what we were talking about a few minutes ago. And when we had the 10-step process, you just added a couple of steps in front of that. Because you could buy training by just doing those 10 things, but you can't buy culture change by just buying those 10 things.
It's not about paper. It's not a piece of paper. It's the whole process, the whole respective whole the employees, the behavior. It's about behavior, right?
And what'll happen over time is when you go in and do that and you help them with that, you will actually encourage a whole new class of employee to want to work there. Because you will bring in employees who want to be fulfilled by their work. They want to be proud of their work. They want to continually get better and smarter and move up in the organization. And, so and you need to be willing to share that with your clients, because you believe it, you're going to do it, and they're going to get the benefits from it. And, one of the things you may find is an opportunity for you is, if you were to say all those things you just said, somebody may say, wow, that's going to be wonderful, wonderful, but it's such a big change. You have the opportunity as a small company, you can come in and say, look, we suggest we do this change in selected areas first, get 3 or 4 areas where this is working really, really well, and then use that as a launching pad for more and more and more organizational areas. So that doing pilots, or whatever you want to call them, is wonderful, because you couldn't train 5,000 people anyway, without changing, you'd have a lot of work to train 5,000 people in a hurry. But you could train 5 departments in a hurry, and you could help the departments change the culture, and the departments believe in their work, and the departments be proud of identifying the number of problems we really have and then fixing them and reporting them. You can do that. So when somebody says this is a big undertaking, that's your opportunity to say, of course it's a big undertaking. And that's why we have a plan for that. And the plan is we start with 2 or 3 or 5 of your departments, we get them functioning highly, and then we move on to 5 more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Does that fit what you were saying?
Yeah.
So, when you think about putting together the principles, and people often think about the principles as exclusively internal, so that when you hire new people, you will tell them, in no way, in no uncertain terms, that we're here to help integrate safety management into corporate departments and culture, period. We're not here just to do a training class and leave and collect our money. We're here to actually get this stuff integrated. And that's why we have consulting that helps really define what this should be. And then we have training and deployment that makes it happen. I mean, that's motivating. I want to work for you because I want to see those things happen. So you've got some things here that make for great principles. And the fact that they do work well for your team, this also is something you want to say as you started out today on your website. This is something you want to write a white paper about. This is something you want to talk about, that it's essential. It's not nice. It's not optional. Because if you don't do what you've said here, integrate this into the way everybody works, the culture, and the word you might add to this is habits, because part of this is helping people create a habit that, you're going to, do this every time. But part of that is, I lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going with that. But at any rate, I think this is, I know, I was going to say this is something you say to customers. And you say it on your website, you say it when you meet them in person. And the fact that you say it on your website, you say it in person, it's in your blogs, it's in your talks, now people start to believe you mean it. Mm-hmm. And when you write a contract or you do a joint statement of work, and in the joint statement of work, you talk about the fact we have to be aligning the training we're doing with the integration of the safety and management platform all into one piece. Otherwise, where the corporation's going and where we're training, they're going different directions, and that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So these are good examples of either complete principles, or in some cases, maybe a couple of principles, and in some cases, partial principles. They're things you believe, and they're things that you're going to actually implement and deploy, and you're going to hold your own team accountable for. And when you're training your clients' teams, you're going to hold their teams accountable for learning it. And I would even personally go so far as, and I'm not saying this is easy to do and it may take a while, but when you do training, you probably are going to find people in those training classes that are obstructionists. They're intentionally either not paying attention, or they're only half-hearted doing it. Maybe part of what you want to offer is some form of metric for the people in the class, other than did they complete the required learning by the government or the union or whoever's requiring the learning. Are these people on board with the cultural change? So I think you got a really good start here. And one of the other, you see, even these below the line are really principal areas as well. The principle is we only do work in our identified niches, or in for the problems we've identified we solve, or however you want to say that. And we only do, one of the other principles is really about, we will always be a business partner with the intent of making our clients' world better.
Yeah.
Because that's the essence of all of this. I mean, this one that's the price-driven vendor, really the positive statement for a principle is every project will be about making our clients' world better based on solving the problems that we've, our strategic problems, or whatever you want to say that. But you've got some really powerful things here already in place. And my guess is you get to tell me if you took on 4 or 5 clients for training, I'm assuming you're going to hire some outsourced people to help with the training?
Yes.
Okay. Part of the power in the principles is when you hire them, part of your contract is that they're going to live with the principles as you've defined them.
Okay.
Because when you make a promise to your client like this,
yeah,
you need to recruit, screen, and hire consultants who are going to deliver that.
Okay.
So when you make that kind of, when you identify that, I don't care if it's 3 principles, 5, 10, whatever number are really essential for you to deliver what you promised to the client, and you are going to use outsourced trainers, you want outsourced trainers who are committed to delivering what you've promised.
Yeah.
Because your clients will be extremely disappointed if you promise something, this important, and then you say, well, we hired an outside consultant and they didn't do it. They don't want to hear that, and it won't help you get the next deal.
Oh, no.
So that's why the principles get so important, because some outside consultants would look at something like this and say, that's not me. I'll go through the curriculum and I'll make sure we get scores, but don't ask me to be passionate or extraordinary or excited about this. That's not me. Yeah. Now, other people will go, oh my gosh, I finally get to be myself, and I get to really throw myself into the work, and I get to really excite and engage the students. oh, that sounds wonderful. So, you know, making your guiding principles clear to everybody is a really powerful and very good, and it costs you nothing. You know, it just is really defining them and then holding them accountable for doing it. And as you interview outside consultants, some people will come in half asleep and hungover. They're probably not going to qualify. So, but don't, and we'll talk more next week. Or on Saturday, think about the principles, and, you know, see if you can, you know, it doesn't have to be a lot of them. I mean, it could be 4 or 5 of them. It's just, these are the things that when our clients engage with us, they're expecting these things. And if they're expecting it, we're going to deliver it. And it also helps you. I love I like all these, but this one is one of my favorites, because you're really saying, I'm not going to do a project with you if I can't see it's a complete project. If I can't see you're really going to be better because we did it. You know, and just getting you compliant for insurance or union or FAA or whoever else, and just getting you compliant doesn't make you any better. It makes you no better than you are today and compliant. That's not what I'm talking about. If I can help you integrate this into your culture, and I can help each department be more self-sustaining, more, they have greater pride in what they're doing, all those kinds of, then I've accomplished something for you.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is good, and start to think about just the statements of principles, because when you hire or when you use outside contractors, this is a way for you to have some degree of control over those outsiders. Because if you just tell a contractor, we want to do great work for our client, without stated principles or stated values or processes, they get to make up what they think it is. So we don't want them to make it up. They can help you with good ideas, but we don't want them to make it up. So this has been a really good conversation today. And in thinking about your feedback on buyer-seller gap and the 3 rules, and all the rest of the conversation we have, the scope of work, we're starting to define the way you communicate. What, you know, as you said, you know, conversations are not the only way, and they typically occur into the process where somebody's already been to your website, you know, they've already learned something, somebody's referred to you. So be clear about the way you engage. In today's world, and that buyer-seller gap starts right out saying Amazon has trained us, right?
Yeah.
And so Amazon has trained us. And so you get to leverage the fact that Amazon and eBay and, you know, all these places have identified the way to do business with them that gets their customers the best outcome. And if you don't like the way they do business, you're not going there. And so it helps the seller, you, find those people who really want the things you had on your True North. They really want the integration. You know, they really want the passionate approach. They really are not okay with just checking the boxes. So think about how you want to communicate, how you want to move people through the flow, the revenue roadmap flow. And the way you engage for a lot of people is as important or more important than the product or service. You know, in the example I use all the time is, I will pay more for Amazon than maybe someplace I can find it where I'm not sure of delivery, I'm not sure of return policy, I'm not sure of, that I'll get credited on a return within hours. You know, all of those things to me, from an engagement standpoint, are more important than the price, particularly on items that only cost $12 or $20 or $40 or $50 to begin with. Do I really care if I pay $3 or $4 or $5 more? No, I really don't. I want satisfaction that the process I can count on. I don't have to keep double checking it. You know, I just don't want to deal with any of that. And if you think of, one of the things about Canada versus the US is the different ways we handle medical in the two countries. And, it's medical such a pain here. And, I think in some ways Canada's smoothed out the medical process, but process matters, and the way people are treated in the process matters. So think about what you want your customers. How can you make it as easy for them as possible to go through the process and be confident that you're going to give them the outcome you promised? Mm-hmm. And so what that does is, when the customer finds you or you find them, and they say to you, Belerma, that problem you said you solved, I got that. I want to get it solved. What do we do? You want to be able to give them, it's a 6-step, a 5-step, it takes 2 weeks, it takes a month. And when we get to that point, you'll know exactly what's going to happen. If you like it, we do a contract and we'll go forward. If you kind of like it, but we need to tweak it, we'll tweak it and then contract it and go forward. But this is exactly what we're going to go do. That's what we're trained for today. I mean, that's what airlines do to us as travelers. As I watch as a traveler, I've flown, I'm over 3.5 million miles, so I've flown a lot of miles. And I've watched the different ways they've trained us to be passengers. And it's very subtle, but it's really clear, about how we handle baggage and how we get to use our frequent flyer miles and how we get upgraded and, what the food situation is and all those things. They have trained us over a long period of time. And for the most part, I like it because I know what the outcome is. And so that's what this number E is about. And part of that I can't stress highly enough is, when you don't help the client recognize the value of having their problem solved, if they don't understand how big a deal solving this problem is, they'll never pay you what your work is worth. So it's not enough that they want your product or service. By getting your product or service, they have to recognize how much better their world is with it, because they'll pay for the better. Yeah. And so part of your process, your engagement model, is helping them fully understand the problem and fully understand the benefits of having it solved. That's why when that 10-step process, and I said, you guys bring some things up front, which is your integration within the different parts. Mm-hmm. When you put that on, this 10-step process went from being worth $20,000 to be worth $50,000. And so now they recognize it. They go, oh my gosh, now training's important. Because we're actually changing the culture to actually support, our safety mission. Before we were just doing the training because somebody said we had to. Now we're doing it to make it better. So the way you engage is a really big deal. So let me look at something here just for a second. Did you get a chance to think about this?
Yeah, the compelling message.
Yep.
Yeah, that's when you gave me a homework to talk about to bring the problem of our customers. I was thinking about compelling message, so how I compel our customer. Yeah.
And this is one of those things that as when you leave here, and absolutely you've reached the level of mastery of materials, so I'm not worried about that. What I want you to do is when you leave me on this process on Saturday, I want you to be able to really deploy it and use it as you go forward. And because it's so easy for us to fall back to what we used to do. And, this is one of those pieces that I want to make sure that you keep applying, because it's a piece you can use every single solitary day. You use it in oral, you use it in written, you use it in websites. This particular developing the compelling message, if you remember the video on the goldfish and the 7 seconds of attention span, that's why that very first piece, that awe, that wow, that shock, that piece that gets people's attention is so important. And for you, that needs to have something to do with the problem that you're solving for them. Because when they come to your website, or they hear you speak, or they look at a proposal that you send them, the cover letter for your proposal needs to start right out with that theme that absolutely captures their attention and gives you the chance then to put them in the picture and get excited. Because if you just send a proposal and the cover letter's boring, or it's from your frame of reference, it's you want their money, they don't get very interested in your proposal. And so it's really important that every time you write or speak or do anything, you're using these 4 pieces to help you keep. And it's not just selfish. I mean, it does get you great benefits. But if you don't grab the customer's attention right in the beginning, and you don't explain to them in less than a minute why they care, they're missing the opportunity to fully understand what you bring to them. Because if you make them wait, they may go to sleep, or they're watching their phone, or they're off doing something else before you get to the meat of it. So the whole idea of the compelling message model is grab their attention with a theme that they can't ignore, immediately put them in the picture, make them understand why they should be excited to hear what's next. I don't mean excited in a giggly way, but that they're, whether you say they're eager, they're stimulated, they're whatever the word is, they're going, my gosh, can you really help me with that? And if you've got them there, then they'll go, oh, this is how you do it. Oh, I get it. This is how we measure it. This is how we deploy it. You got to get them grabbed in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So this is one to keep working on. until it becomes second nature. And, you know, one of the things we'll talk about Saturday are habits and starting to build habits. And that's part of the homework going to be for today is think about the habits that you want to build going forward. And, you know, I'll just throw out 2 or 3, but one would be to think about and start with writing, because when you write emails or you write proposals or you're creating PowerPoints, you know, you can have this thing sitting on your desk and you can look at it and say, am I starting down here with the comfort part, the what we do and the details, which will put them to sleep, or am I starting at this high level saying, you know, let's see, injuries are one of the biggest problems in the airline industry. Well, that's an attention getter. It's an awing kind of thing. And maybe people in the Air Force or the airline industry are immediately going to say, what do you mean injuries? And then when they think that, that's where you put them in the picture and you talk about ground handling, or you talk about passenger injuries, or whatever kind of injuries you want to talk about. You put them in the picture next. And then you talk about how you solve those problems. And then eventually you give them the proofs that we really can solve those problems. So get into the habit of using this tool to help you create material. So we're going to talk, habits will be part of our homework this time. There's a couple of slides I want to do that we haven't done. I want to talk about this one for a minute. One of the challenges that we have in this century is there's so much going on. The technology, the smallness of the world, that when somebody in the Middle East does something, everybody in the world knows it. And when somebody in New York does something, everybody in the world knows it. And we just have all this stimulation going on. And it's so hard for us to separate what I need to know and need to do something about. And so you have to build, again, this is another habit thing. I have to build ways to secure the information I need to know, because there's too much of it out there. I can't know it all. So how do I look for and take in the information I need? And so the market is talking to us all the time. And if we start to look for what the market is telling us, do we get a really tight, definitive answer? No. But we do start to build up an awareness of what's going on around us, and we start to see when things change. And that's probably about all we can do right now, is just start to monitor changes. So the answers that we need to run our business are really out there in the market. And one of them is how the market is listening to you and to your messages, okay? If they're listening, are they calling you? Because that's a way you know they listened. Somebody talked to them. Doesn't mean you talked to them, but it could be a friend. It could be a company they used to work for was one of your clients, and they've got you on their mind, so they call. So start to be aware of incoming communication in the form of calls. When you publish a post or a blog, you can know how many people are reading it. So that gives you an idea. One of the things I love about LinkedIn is LinkedIn helps me know how many people are looking at my profile, how many people looked at my post, how many people, have gone to my company site. So I have a way to start to track the amount of views that they're getting of things I've said or done. So build the habit to start to look at these resources. in some cases, it's do they ask you to, and it could be speak or write or, join a committee or any of those kinds of things. Because when you're asked to join a committee in the industry, somebody's recognized you have value. Somebody's recognized you know something their committee needs to know. Now, regrettably, there's no money associated with that, so you're not increasing your profit. But if they don't hear you at all, and you're not getting phone calls, they're not reading your posts, they're not asking you to speak, they're not asking you to join councils, they're not seeking your advice by just saying, hey, I've got to go do this, what do you think? If you're not hearing those things, we aren't communicating the early conversations enough with the market. They're not aware we're there. Does that part make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And the second one is, if they've listened to you, what are they saying about you? And when I say saying, it's not necessarily, it's not like they're telling tales out of school or they're gossiping, but it's, do they ever quote anything that you do? Are you, actually one of the things I looked up today was Chief Revenue Officer, because I was doing a talk, and the first time I ever used that phrase, I looked it up on Google, and there were 6 pages. Today on Google, there's 200 million pages. So Chief Revenue Officer as a term has gotten bigger. But when I looked it up, I also just noticed they also have their own Wikipedia page for Chief Revenue Officers, which I thought was cool. And one of my clients is quoted on there. So, somehow I kind of take that as I was heard, because here's one of my clients being quoted on the Wikipedia page for Chief Revenue Officers. So I'm going, okay, there was some impact for what I did with him that got him onto the Wikipedia page as a recognized expert. Good. Are you being studied? Do you get people who call you and say, hey, I heard about what you're doing. Would you just share a little bit with me so I understand it better? Now, part of us says, I'm busy. I don't have time to do that. But if you take a step back and recognize what this is really about, it's about the market recognizing your value and wanting to learn more. So, you almost ought to pay people to call and want to study you, because what it says is something out there made this human aware that you're important and that you have something the world needs to know more about. And not only do you have it, but it was interesting enough that this person called you. So while it doesn't necessarily give you a purchase order, it does help you recognize that your message is out there. When you're talking to somebody who wants to study you or learn about you, you're learning, why did you call? What is it that we do that generated something? And I don't think I've told you this story, but it's 3 years ago, I got an email that was titled Revenue Generation Consultancy Contract. That was the subject line. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, it was from the King of Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And it was real. Long story, we knew how to research it. Actually, the prince is a friend of mine, so he contacted the prince, and it was real. I'd never talked to him. I didn't know anything about any of it. But I got this email, and they were serious. They were looking for a contract. We didn't do it ultimately, but from a are they listening standpoint, I guess they were listening. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got that email, okay?
No.
And so, again, there was no short-term money from it. But what it said is, something I'm doing is getting out there in the market, and somebody out there seems to care. And so then the last one says, are you ever used as an example? And I get used as an example a lot, and you want to be used as an example, which really part of what that means is I get referred to help people, either for money or just to help a friend of mine or to help a client help somebody. Those are all demonstrations that somebody's identifying your value. And so maybe it's still not perfect yet, but the market is telling you you're doing something right. And then the next one, which is you're trying to move them from left to right here on the page. What do they do? Well, do they request you to go do a talk? Do they request you to come meet with them? Do they request you to do a joint statement of work? You're looking for those kinds of things that maybe aren't completely, they're not a complete scope of work contract, but they're there calling you because they think you can solve a problem. Are you always on a short list? And short list from a contract standpoint is everybody who wants training always send you the proposal request or send you the opportunity to be engaged. Do you get to help design the work? Now, this is one I get frequently. Somebody says, well, I'm thinking about hiring a new VP of sales. What should I take into consideration? And, they're not asking me to come out and do a consulting project for them, but they just want to not screw it up. So they'll call and ask, 2 or 3 questions. Well, again, they're calling me because they think I might be able to help in some way. And then do you get extra margin for your extra value? And for you and for me and for Wayne, this is a big deal. And I will say in my consulting work, I think I do a pretty good job of getting extra value for the work we do. Our work is very simple. If you don't, within months, you should have all my fees paid back many, many times. So you shouldn't really care how much I charge you because you're getting it back really fast. And so, but that's one of the metrics that's really important to me is I want you to be sure you're getting all the value and you know it. And so my fee is never an issue to you. And are you sole sourced? And this is another one that's very important to me. And it's one that I see all the time. I don't ever compete. I never compete. It just doesn't happen. I'm the only one who knows how to do the things I do. And so when people call me, they're never asking me to compete with anybody else. They're just making a decision. Are they going to hire me and are they willing to do the work? Because as you've been through over the last few weeks, there's work here. There's nothing lazy about what you're learning and what you're going to go deploy. So if you don't want to do this, then you won't hire me. But if you do want to do it, I don't ever have competition. And then another one that's important to me is, am I treated as a partner? And I mean, I've had the same client for 15 years. So they must think I'm a partner or something when they hang around that long. And so for you, some of these are important, some of them aren't. But it is important that you recognize the market is speaking to you all the time. Even if they do nothing, they're speaking to you because they're saying, we don't know you're there. So the we don't know you're there is not okay. You've got to figure out how to make sure they know you're there. And one of the things today is the world's changing so fast. For years, LinkedIn was my how do they know I'm there. Today, LinkedIn is fine, but it doesn't get me the same outcomes it got me 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I have to find new ways. So does this make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, my coaching to you and to Wayne is to figure out which of these you can listen to and can hear and can learn from. And you want to keep moving them from that left side to that right side. But you don't just go to people treating you as a partner. They start over there and they hear you and they go, oh, that's interesting. And they read another blog, or they go to your website, or they run into you at a conference, or those kinds of things. And then they start quoting you. Well, Belima told me this is true, and that it's part of their program, and I really like it. You know, and then it moves over to the farther right. So it's a pattern, and you need to have the complete pattern in place in order to, you know, really continue to grow and then keep monitoring it. So this is one of the habits that I would hope you guys would, you know, buy into, is listen to the market. I look at LinkedIn half a dozen times a day, and I have ways that I respond. Anybody who sends me a message, I have a way to respond. And in some cases, that creates the next level of communication on this chart. And so, and it takes me 2 minutes, and it costs me nothing. So that's a great way to communicate. So that makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when we complete this phase of the process on Saturday, some of the things for you to start to think about and focus on are, you know, some of these are equal parts skill and equal parts habit, okay? And I have been doing one of these for, wow, going on 20 years, and that is buyer frame of reference. For me, while I think I'm really good at it, I also have to keep working at it and keep driving the habit home, because it's easy to say, I think you should do this. And that's easy to say, but it will create the wrong outcome. So I might even write it, and then I go back and erase it and start over and do it right. So I still, after all these years, have to work on the habit of not making this about what I think somebody should do, because the truth is, for the most part, they don't care. And what they care about is if they get a better outcome. So I have to continually work at getting better and improving my skill is what I have to work at. First, improving the fact I always do it, and then I always get better and better and better at how to do it. So as you move on to the next phase, one of the skills to be a really good chief revenue officer is today, I can't, if you and I have a conversation, I cannot stop myself. I have put myself in the role of your customer. I am not thinking about being your trainer or your consultant. I am immediately your customer. I can't stop myself. So every conversation I have, I immediately jump to the customer, and I think like the customer thinks. Now, it's taken 30 years to get good at that, but today, I almost always know exactly what that customer is going to think, do, and want, because I've just trained myself, and I just don't allow any other conversation. Because if I really want to add value to the customer and I want them to pay me for value, I got to think about their world, not mine. And so that buyer's frame of reference is both a skill and it's a habit. And like, I don't know if you're into any sports, but in any form of sport, you can intellectually know you're supposed to do something, but until you build habits and repeat and repeat and repeat, you don't own it. And so this CRO stuff is no different. And one of those habits also is that buyer's problem that you uniquely solve and the value for it. I know I say it so much that at times people go, yes, I've heard that. Yes, I've heard that. But it's the essence of your business. The essence of your business is solving a problem for some human out there that when you solve it, they will be thrilled to compensate you fairly for that work. And because we don't follow step one, which is buyer's frame of reference, if we don't follow buyer frame of reference, it's almost impossible to communicate about the buyer problem you solve. Because you're not speaking from the buyer's frame of reference. We're talking about our product or our service or, our contract or, our training. They don't care about that. There's 100 other trainers that'll talk about their training too. But when you speak to the buyer about their problem using language that demonstrates you've placed yourself in their position as best you possibly can, it just like the person you met at Southwest, when you start talking about the problem, they go, yeah, I've had that one. I know exactly what that one looks like. You completely change the conversation. So is it a skill? Yes. Is it a skill that gets better with habit? Yes. So these are ones that every day for the rest of your career, if you want to keep getting better and better. And the beauty of this is when you think about the world from the buyer frame of reference, as the buyers change and you're continually improving your buyer frame of reference, you're changing with them. You don't have to go back and read market research and say, what should I go do? If you're going to deal with hundreds of buyers a year, they're going to keep you educated, and then you still want to do some research. But the buyers are going to help you know what's going on out there and what they want to pay for. The third one that's a skill for developing is, I don't know how you were trained in school, but I was trained in school that we measure activity. We measure how many, for salespeople, how many cold calls did you make today? Nobody ever asked me how many leads did you get. They asked me how many calls did you make? And you kind of sit there and go, do you really care how many calls? I got you 10 leads. You only needed 5. I got you 10. So do you really care how many calls I made? And the answer is they really don't. They just wanted the leads. And that's so true in all of our businesses. When you're thinking about measuring people going through that revenue roadmap, the outcomes are what are important. If your marketing element is creating the right number of the right leads at the right time, now I care about the activity that got the right number of the right leads at the right time, because if I want to scale, I want to do more of it. And if I don't get the right number of the right type at the right time, I now care about the activity because I got to fix it. But I don't care about the activity all by itself. I care about the outcomes all by themselves. And then I go back to the activity to say, can I make it better? Can I make it faster? Can I make it cheaper? Or do I need to get rid of it? So, and behavioral outcomes, the word behavioral is there because it's human outcomes. When you're trying to get a contract, the human decides to say, yes, we're going to do this. And I've got my team on board and they've all said yes. There's no company says yes. The humans in the process say yes. And we've talked about it a little bit over the weeks, but there's starting to be some really phenomenal neurological type research on how people make decisions and how you can support them making great decisions. So, neuroscience is going to help us as we go forward to, in that buyer-seller gap, to actually be valuable to the buyer in the early stages as opposed to be kind of a nuisance, which is what they were really telling us we are as salespeople. And if you take the fourth one, the continuous improvement, The continuous improvement really says, if whatever outcomes I'm getting, if I go back to the activity that creates the outcomes, what can I do to continually make the outcome occur faster? You know, if you start at the end of the revenue roadmap, the red, the delivery, if the customer would really, Amazon, well, we used to send it to you in 4 days. Now we send it to you in 2, and then we send it to you in 1. Are you happier? Yeah, I'm a whole lot happier. Do you buy more? A whole lot more. So, you know, they did a wonderful job of saying, you know, the behavioral outcome is we ship, you receive, you smile. Now we're making the activity so that it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And continuous improvement, when you have the orange, which is marketing, the blue, which is sales, and the red, which is delivery, it's the balancing of those three so that you're not overspending in one. I have a client right now that marketing can create more leads than blue, the sales group, can follow up on. Well, so that's not good, because in effect we're telling a bunch of clients, hey, come to us, we're great. And then they come and we disappoint them. That's not good. So that continuous improvement is for the whole process. And it's the, you know, particularly because, you know, you guys are a small company. And so you have to constantly be looking at, how do I have the right number of the leads, that I have the sales resources to call on, and then once we close them, that we can actually deliver all that work on time to satisfy the customer and make the money we need. So this continuous improvement skill, it's more than just a nice conversation we have here. It's one of those things you want to always be watching in your business. And this is one that you can help your clients with. Because when you're talking about that cultural change, you're really saying to the client, we will help you do the consulting work, then we'll help you with the training work, but don't believe for a second we're done. Because we know we didn't get it to the perfect place the first time. So the real opportunity is to continually improve it over time. And once we've got it running really smooth here, then we pick it up and put it in another department. Then we do the same thing in another department. So continuous improvement, once you get good at it, it's even before you get good at it, once you just get it in your brain and you start to think about it, you really can make a lot of improvement fast. Because when we talked about the behavioral outcomes and the behavioral outcomes being driven by activities, once you understand that the whole system is made up of lots of behavioral outcomes and lots of activities, often companies just throw away a system because the system didn't work. It could be one part of the system didn't work. The rest of it worked. If you fixed the one activity to create that one additional outcome, the whole thing would work. So do you want to throw away hundreds of thousands on a whole system? Or do you want to go fix the one piece in the middle? Go fix the one piece in the middle. So getting good at this and being able to describe this to your customers, because what you and Wayne do, I believe, has a kind of continuous improvement foundation to it. Is that true?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So making this part of your skill and making this part of your habits, that you look at every situation and you're asking yourself, you know, what's the activity before it? And while the activity seems to work, maybe the outcome before that activity was, you know, like if marketing doesn't send enough leads to sales, sales can't close enough deals for delivery. So delivery's complaining, we got people sitting around doing nothing, they're blaming it on sales. And the problem might be marketing, might not be sales at all. Sales are doing a great job with what we give them. We're just not giving them enough. Mm-hmm. So by breaking down the system and looking at it in smaller pieces, all of a sudden it's manageable. You can actually go fix it. And that's part of what you and Wayne are going to do for your clients. So this is a great skill. And then finally, the joint statement of work process is another both habit and skill. And part of the reason it's a habit is there will be times you're talking to a customer, prospective customer. You like them, they like you, you think they understand what you do, you think both of you think you understand the other one, and they'll say, well, can you get me a proposal? And your natural tendency is, yes, I want to help you, I'll get you a proposal. Plus I want the contract. But you have to say no. I mean, the habit is you have to say no. When somebody asks you for a contract, you have to say, well, the first thing we've got to do is a joint statement of work. Now, you can do it in a day or two if you set a process up to do it in a day or two. Doesn't have to take a week, doesn't have to take a month, but you do have to make sure both parties know exactly what they're getting into. And no matter how good we are at this, sometimes negative surprises show up. But you want to do everything possible to remove negative surprises, because sometimes surprises take your profit right out of the deal, and you don't want that. And sometimes surprises blow the customer's budget all over the place, and they don't want that. So it's important that we do everything possible to make everybody confident and comfortable and doing some form of joint statement of work, even if you scale it back to, we're going to set up a call, we're going to have your team on the phone, our team on the phone, call will take an hour, hour and a half. If we've got this thing down pat, we can have your proposal 48 hours later. But make sure you do it. Mm-hmm. So, as you go forward, and there may be other skills that you want to focus on, but I wanted to just pull out a group that I want you to think about these between now and Saturday. And no way you're going to go do all of these in a moment. If I played golf for years and somebody could give me a list like this and say, these are 5 skills you've got to get in golf. Well, that might take me 2 years. So it's not that these things are going to happen overnight, but you need to think about these and say, how do I start down this road? What's the first thing I want to do? What will help me be the best professional I can be? What will help me move the company forward? What will help my clients become dependent on our relationship? Whatever it is that you think is the most important, pick the skill or habit or a couple of skills and a couple of habits and say, I'm going to focus on these. And then you have to create a process because, in the compelling message one, I said, just put it on the table. And when you write an email, look at it and see, am I doing it? So build a way that you don't allow it to slip away from you somehow. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Because you said it earlier, you're a great student. And so I know you're getting this. I just don't want you to lose it. I want you to keep applying it. And you've got a great place because you and Wayne are both on the same page on this. So we want to build that habit in that, you get to really get some kind of value out of it long term, not just in the short term. So for next week, well, first, do you have any questions from this week or anything that either was in your homework?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So for our Saturday call, we're really going to focus on helping you go forward regarding the mastery of all this material, okay? And I know you understand it intellectually, but I just want to help cement it through repetition and through using it. So we'll talk about, now that you've had a chance to go through all these things, let's come back and, tell me what you believe the answers to those 5 strategy questions are. And you can write them down and send them if you want, but it's more important that we can talk about them. You got a chance to experience that with the Southwest Airlines guy. So the more we talk about it, the more you'll own it, and you'll be confident to say it to other people, and you'll start thinking that way. So we can talk through it. You can write it however you learn best, but let's do that. Then the second thing is I want to spend some time with you talking about your strategy as it relates to that bell curve. And, we've talked about your consulting work can be over here and the training work can be over there. I want to talk through that and see if they're not more reconcilable than maybe you originally thought. Because if we can make them more linked, then you'll sell more, you'll sell faster, you get higher margins. And so let's just talk through that so that you get a feel for how that all would come together. Mm-hmm. And I then want to spend a fair amount of time talking about offers in the way you're configuring, and whether you choose to do the training offer or the consulting offer. I'd love to have you take that orange curve and put some pieces in for one of those two and tell me, kind of like you were talking to a client, and say, this is this offer. Here's the problem it solves. It fits in your niche because you're an airline, or you're a airport, or you're a whatever, and this is a niche we dominate. You're a big one or a small one. Let's just walk through that, because that will help you focus your messaging, your website, your conversations with those people who are most likely to buy the offer. Then we can talk about cost of chaos. We just went through the buyer-seller gap, so we won't spend much time on that. We just went through the 3 rules. We won't spend much time on that. But I'd also like you to just take in the habit skill questions we just went over, and that's that. Think about how you're going to address those. And then if we have time, we may look at that mastery list, but I think we're pretty good on that. So this will be the outline. The other thing is, bring me any questions or any concerns or ideas or anything that you've got.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds good, Rick.
And I will tell you, after our session Saturday, I will send up your certification material. And I'm never sure how fast it gets from Phoenix to Canada. So sometimes it goes fairly quickly. Sometimes it takes longer, but we'll get it sent out after Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we good for today?
Yes, we're good.
Well, thank you for flexibility on time.
Oh, thank you, Rick.
Okay, and I'll get your stuff posted as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Bye-bye.
Take care.